This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Jared Redick. You're a transformational leader, and we're going to talk about mentoring the next generation of artists, preparing for the global stage. That's going to be the focus tonight. But welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
So you've got a very award-winning career. There's a choreographer, a coach, and you're actually you're in a dean position, assistant dean at your school.
I am. I'm definitely that.
So we're going to tell your whole story, but before we get to the story of your life and what you've been doing as an artist, we always ask everybody on the show a couple questions. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
What motivates me? I like at this stage of my career, and I think for a lot of my career, I really feel that I've been given a lot of opportunities in my life. And when I teach and when I'm working with my peers and my colleagues, I want to give back to them. So I feel like I'm in service of the art form. Again, I really have been given a lot of opportunities, and I'm very grateful for that. So I really come to my life as an exploration of gratitude.
So you want to pay it forward. Like I think like anybody who gets in a role as a mentor or a teacher, I mean, if you're a musician, you become a producer, you're like a teacher.
Yeah,
You want to take what you've learned as on stage and then hand it down to the next generation and keep it going, right? Keep the art form vital.
exactly.
So you're a third generation ballet dancer. How did that approach uh, shape your approach to dance and leadership and everything you're doing?
Well, my grandmother was a prima ballerina in the Hungarian National Ballet, and then she taught my mom, and then my mom passed that to me as my teacher and my older brother as well. So it really doesn't form it because I've been around it my whole life, and so my viewpoint is really filtered through being around dance and particularly ballet since my earliest recollections, earliest memories in my life.
And so like you're in a very kind of I would say a canon of the form.
Hmm.
And so like when you're in that kind of canon of the form, and then you have other types of dance,
Hmm.
like modern dance, contemporary dance. How does that like inform the or it balance your point of view? Are you really like in the canon, or you're willing to go outside the canon and look at other things?
Well, because of the companies and because how the art form is evolving, obviously you have the classical ballet canon and all of that repertory, but that repertory now includes so many works by contemporary choreographers. You have modern choreographers like Martha Graham, who've done works on ballet companies as well. So you really are informed by so many things within the dance discipline. It's not just classical ballet. So I've been very fortunate to do many, many different kinds of dance throughout my career.
Is that something that's typical in this age, or like if in a conservatory? Because I've dealt with like musicians that are in conservatories, and they tend to lean toward like very traditional structure. But so you're saying the world's a little more open, more expansive?
Yes, I think the dance career, especially where I teach now. So when I was a dancer, I had all those roles to dance within this vast repertory of works. And now, as a teacher here at UNCSA, we have our ballet students. They get their ballet technique and all of that, but they also have contemporary works as well, including West African. They have opportunities to explore musical theater and singing. So anything that's within the genre, they explore, and that is fairly typical within the field because we need to be able to um, teach this next generation of dancers to be adaptable and have as broad a spectrum of opportunities as they can have.
That's really incredible because like in terms of some art forms, you get kind of you kind of get stagnated by the can
Yeah,
to a certain point where you might learn on it,
yeah,
right? And then you're kind of told that that's the standard, like in jazz, like bebop
yeah,
is like, if you go into modal or you go into something more experimental or fusion, it's like what even Miles Davis, people argued like he's going against the canon, he's in the canon.
Yeah, primarily the students that I work with they're there to learn the ballet technique, right, and the methodology. That is their base. But
Mhm.
what we feel is that from that base, they can explore any other genre of dance because it really does shape and inform the body and the coordinations that are necessary. So, um,
It gives you a wider palette. Like the
exactly,
more expansive you can be, the more you're willing to entertain cross genre or genres that you wouldn't be expected, like world genres,
yeah,
going outside of like maybe Western experience, looking at Eastern, looking at African, looking at other societies, different cultural forms of the dance. Even going back to like indigenous,
of
then
course.
then you could actually start to say, hey, there's something that 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 speaks to me outside of my core discipline, and then you're not dissuaded from doing that. I guess you're encouraged to do that.
Yeah, and I think what we want is to give our dancers the most solid base that we can give them, and then they can make that choice. Now they're prepared to take on and tackle whatever direction that they decide to go in.
Well, you get your 10,000 hours. You get you learn the core like any musician. Like we get our get it down right in terms of like it's muscle memory that I can just play without looking at the keys. Right, I can
Exactly.
not look at the fretboard and I just know it. I can hear it. I can know what key I'm in. Know what you have that muscle memory like an athlete doing a 3 point shot or being able to redo do that play at any point and apply it at the right point in time. So
Exactly.
so it's
Exactly.
like the situational awareness, of a musician to be or an artist to be able to like, hey, how do I deal with the now? Like all this preparation, but if something happens that's a little off kilter, can I actually respond to it in real time? Is that part of the I would think like you have to be able to adjust to what is going on in the moment, right?
Of course, especially when we have choreographers come in because you don't know what background or what movement vocabulary that those choreographers are going to bring with them, and so our dancers need to be able to um, adjust on the fly, right, and be able to mirror whatever shapes that choreographer is giving them and whatever movement style that they're requiring. Whether and that could be hip hop, it could be classical ballet, it could be contemporary ballet. So we
So
want.
so like as an artist before you became a teacher or a professor,
Mhm.
can you kind of talk about that part of your life and maybe tell the story to maybe how you got to this point where you actually decided you wanted to be in education, but like the skill sets that you bring to it from your previous role is actually being in the form.
Yeah, I think unlike musicians who can have a very long career and continue doing it well into their 40s, 50s, 60s. Dance is a young man's game, just like or a young person's game.
Uh-huh.
Just like sports, just like pro sports, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
expiration
but
date for your capability, right?
yeah, so the body gives out. So really, what we're talking about, I look at my kind of career in kind of two phases, really three. My training, but really what you're asking about is specifically my performing career when I was actually on the stage doing that. So
Hmm.
I was very lucky to have a 20-year career um, in major companies in the United States. And I danced a wide variety of repertory within those companies. And I was fortunate that at the latter part of my career, about maybe midpoint of my career, I was then asked to, when the company was off, we had some layoff time or some off time to start teaching and
Hmm.
working with other dancers and younger dancers. So I started doing that probably around my late 20s, and then continued to do that when I was not dancing and on the stage. So it ended up being that when I got to the end of my career, I did have a choice
Yeah,
that
you had to pivot. You had a way to pivot
exactly.
because you actually had something that you were like
Yeah,
thinking ahead. Well,
yeah,
I mean, some people might not think like ahead. They might not think about like, well, I'm in the now. I'm not going to think about like the next step that's 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road. They think, but that's like pretty, you know, I think it's a good move because
yeah.
then you end up being able to have that second act or your third act or fourth act of your life. You you can kind of see where it could go.
Yeah, I was very lucky in regards to that, because I was given a great opportunity when I was still dancing to run a school. So and so I was doing both at the end, and then that was an easy transition. And for a lot of dancers, and probably for a lot of professionals, it's hard to make that transition when you're going from one thing to the next. I would more liken it to pro athletes. What do you do after you leave the field?
Yeah, not every quarterback's going to be a coach, because they might not have.
Yeah.
You might not have the communication skill to be able to take what you did, because not every great musician can be a teacher, because they might not be able to translate what they're doing. It could be so insular that they can't figure out a way to pass it forward.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many skills that you have to learn to start transmitting these ideas, to educate, to teach, to coach young dancers, but also working with your peers in a different respect. When you're not the talent on the stage or on the field, it's a different thing. It's a different ball game. So you have to really develop those skills. You have to really, and for some people, as you were saying, you're saying that not every great, artist or athlete are good teachers. So that's a whole different skill set. You might, some dancers or some musicians or some actors, they might be brilliant at what they do, but they don't remember how they got there. They don't know how to deconstruct what they did to get to that place, right?
Yeah, so they can't kind of lay out the plan, because there may be such a method actor that they're so in the moment.
Yeah.
If they try to deconstruct and recreate the moment, they can't, actually do the plan it out, or actually give you the layout. They can't actually do that in a way that transmits enough information for you to actually, understand or communicate what's necessary. So I think it's a unique skill set that you have: the communication, the empathy, the patience, the ability to work with people who are maybe not where you are.
Exactly.
And bring them to where they could be, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's pedagogy underneath that, right? There are methodologies that underlie how do you teach someone a skill set, and so you have to learn what that is. You can't it doesn't happen through osmosis that we remember all those skills.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful thing to be able to do that in your life, is to transmit that and actually be successful at it. Because I mean, there are teachers that, well, they're teaching, but they're not, maybe not the best.
Yeah.
And so to get to a point where you actually feel that you're having an impact, and your students feel you actually have an impact, and your colleagues actually are taking your insights and your development. So if in terms of like that transitions, like you have multiple audiences, right? You have your people, your the actual students, but then you also talk about your colleagues. And if you're in a collegial system, you got, I would think you have to satisfy multiple audiences.
Yeah, and then of course you're dealing with multiple ranges of ability and where the students are in their training. So you're constantly adjusting. It's the art of teaching, right? It's never a dull moment when you're teaching someone, because you don't know what people are bringing into the studio. You don't know how they feel day to day. So you're always learning when you're working with whether they're students or whether they're professionals. And I do both.
So mentoring, your mentoring kind of lessons learned, or things that you've determined that work or don't work. Do you want to kind of go through maybe some key points in your career where you're like, oh, you had the aha moment? Oh, like, oh, this is how I actually connect with my students.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is I'm a lifelong learner, and I've been very fortunate to have done a whole bunch of professional development in this direction. I've gone around the world studying methodologies and pedagogies to help support what I'm doing. I kind of reverse engineer what I knew physically, I embodied as a dancer, but then you kind of deconstruct it, and you take from the very best ideas that are out there, and how do I use those to then transmit it to my students? How do I teach them? How do I connect with them on that level that's both um, artistically and pedagogically sound, but also dealing with them or connecting with them as human beings, because dance is it's a very human art form, right? Because your instrument is your body. And
Yeah.
so,
So,
and
I mean, to an extent, musicians, we use our body with our instrument, but you're using your body as the instrument.
yeah. And
Yeah,
so,
so it's a totally different. It's like an actor, in some ways, but it's a lot more movement.
yeah,
Actors have a certain level of movement that they do, but your movement is related to dance, right? It's not
exactly.
related to the scene where you might have some action that's happening, but your action is very specifically choreographed to tell a story through whatever that dance is supposed to represent. And how you tell stories with dance is not how you tell stories in a song or how you tell it as a screenwriter. So it's a different discipline.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you talk to students about like how do you evoke the central theme of a dance or a particular part of a dance? Is there like what's that learning like? How do you convey that to students if they were coming in? Because I've never been in that kind of form, so I'm not sure like how that goes.
Well, I mean, basically, we do for our dancers, whether you're professional or you're a student, you're going to have a daily class, a daily technique class. In that, you're just refining your physical embodiment of the movement, and then we go on. And then we have rehearsals if we're working on whatever the piece or the show that we're working on. It's really in the rehearsal situation that we start exploring how do we interpret the information that we're given, because as dancers in general, we're interpretive artists. We're not creative artists. A choreographer is a creative artist, but a dancer in general is going to be an interpretive artist. You're given material, then you have to turn it around and do something with that material. So you really want to think about the point of departure. Like what are they trying to convey? If we're talking about like a full length ballet, like let's just take Sleeping Beauty, just Sleeping Beauty. If you're doing one of the lead roles, what is your story arc? And try to talk to the dancer. Okay, here's your material, here's your dancing, but how are you going to convey the underlying dialogue that's going
Hmm.
on, right? Because obviously there's no words, but you have to have an underlying dialogue to approach your dancing so that the role is believable, and so you're kind of dancing from the inside out, so you can really you can channel those emotions. And then we work in the studio, like some things you might feel and you might do something in the studio physically, but it doesn't read to the audience, right? So
Hmm.
that's where your coaches are going to come in to be like, okay, that's not going to read that way. We need to try this a little bit in a different way. So I like, it's a
The
lot of
feedback.
fun.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
an interesting feedback loop because it's
yeah,
like how you interpret, like a studio musician might interpret, they don't write the song. Like
yeah,
so a lot of times they'll come in and they gotta pick up the feel or
exactly.
understand what the songwriter was trying to get across and then say, well, maybe there's a different way to approach this
Hmm.
that will connect, it will bring in the hook. Like
Exactly.
it's gonna hook that audience so that they understand, hey, this is the part of the song that like makes you understand like what it's about, like why
Exactly.
you stay in it, why you stay attentive, or why you
Exactly.
get what's going on. So it's like you're as a teacher, you're getting that feedback loop. It's like, hey, you did this intricate move, but it's not hooking.
Yeah,
It's not pulling them in. They don't
exactly.
they don't get what you're not actually. Maybe you didn't actually get what the story's about.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's a physical language, right? Dance is a physical language. And just like we're talking now and we can understand each other, sometimes when you're dancing, if you're watching it in the front of the studio, watching a dancer work, it's like, I'm not understanding what you're trying to say. So let's try doing this a little bit differently. So it's a work in progress. It's a skill. There's
Yeah,
technique to it. There's, how do you uh, in general, you're trying to break through the fourth wall, right? And how do you
it's like a
project that?
vibe. It's like that feel. Like you can have somebody that could technically play like musicians. We run into this all the time. You could play what's on the page,
Yeah,
but you're not feeling it. And
exactly.
it's like, and we can kind of pick up the vibe. Like you could step into a group, right, as a additional person into the group, and then you're like the fourth wheel, the third wheel, because like
Exactly.
you're not vibing. They're like this guy's not getting it. Like he can
Yeah.
play the notes, but he's not getting it. He's not he's not feeling the song. He's not feeling the moment. And it's hard to explain, but it's like you know it when you hear it,
Yeah.
and you guys know it when you see it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that is so when you so that's a really interesting situation because like if they're not picking up their vibe and it's a lot of nonverbal stuff, right? That it's hard to express. It's like deconstructing it, as you say, that's the art of it. Like, how do you
Yeah.
convey what they got wrong?
Yeah, I mean, you give dancers corrections all the time, and sometimes you're trying to get them to maybe adapt a little bit differently. And some days it just doesn't work in that day. Some days it's like we just got to let this go. Okay, let's just
Right.
move on to the next thing, and then we'll come back to it tomorrow. And because we're human beings, and we can. Some people take longer to digest, so you go
Yeah,
through the process.
diminishing returns. Like so, like it's like maybe feeling like if in a musical situation, we could run into a situation where somebody can do like 100 takes in a day,
Yeah,
right? And by take 101, there's diminishing returns. It's like it's not gonna get any better, right? You've actually kind of overworked it,
yeah,
and you got to let it go. You got to walk away because like if you keep on doing it, you're gonna just destroy it. And so it's like just forget it and come back. Sometimes is like the best medicine because like you're trying to sit there and get it. You're not gonna get it today.
exactly. You just get into that frustration, and then of course the body will wear out after a while in terms of being tired for the day. So it's like, hey, let's do it. And sometimes if you're in that situation, it's like let's do it at like 50%, 75% of full effort. So let's
Mhm.
just kind of mark through it. Just marking through it sometimes gives you different pathways into that. Um, and that might be a better use of the time in that situation, is like instead of like let's just pound it out and just really try and make it happen. So I think there's lots of different techniques when we're with working with dancers. Like how do we get to that place where they're achieving at their highest level, right? They're able to authentically um, project whatever it is that they're trying to achieve.
No, we've been talking about the teaching hat. Let's talk about the directing hat.
Yeah,
So where you are directing, like you take a piece and then it becomes like your vision, right? The way you're going to interpret it for the whole um, dance troupe. That the way you're going to actually um, do the Nutcracker is like your vision of the Nutcracker, right? When you're a director, is that true? Is like, or is it the producer that controls it?
well, I mean, it's a little of both. It's really the choreographer, right? Because you're stuck within choreography, but even within the choreography, right? You have the dancers; they know their material. You have your lighting, you have your sets and everything. But when you're in a directing situation, it's you can start playing with some of the lighting design. You can start adjusting how the dancers are moving, even though they have the choreography. It's like, well, let's bring them further upstage, downstage. If it's a
Okay.
narrative moment, the narrative moment's like, okay, we have the choreography, but all of you need to stay still, and so that we can really. It's like
Like
directing
the
for a
focus,
film.
just like the way you choose your
Exactly.
shots as a film director.
It's the
You
same
choose
thing.
yeah, you're choosing your camera angles, you're choosing if the lighting crew's gonna do this, and
Yeah.
if the photographers are gonna use this camera versus that camera versus this boom mic versus this, like, the choices that you make will have an overall effect on the whole thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so you can make those choices, and that's a lot of fun because then again, it becomes a very collaborative approach, right? Because you might be working with the choreographer or the lighting designer. I mean, as you're preparing it for the performances. And so and then of course your stage managers as well. You're working with a lot of different people.
Yeah,
Um
so it's like a
sometimes
team. It's like a
again, you could also look at like costumes as well. Sometimes, like, yes, you have your costumes, but maybe an adjustment needs to be made on a particular dancer. Very, very simple thing that just makes it look better when you're viewing it on stage.
oh,
And
how it'll flow, like how something's draping or how it's coming
yeah,
out in the movement. If your
exactly.
eye catches something, it's like, hey, I need to make an adjustment because I want it to look in this way for this movement. It's like a lot of artistic choices in terms of like the different ways that you're going to convey that canvas. If we talk about music, sometimes sound painting
Yeah.
and like the idea, like if we have this canvas, we can layer things.
Right.
with the sound, and there's stuff that might not appear to matter, right? Because it's kind of like a shadow vocal or a shadow track that once you start building on it and you add layers of different things to it, it actually becomes something else. It's like a paintbrush mixing colors. Like
Exactly.
you start mixing colors, you get different shades of it, and you created something new. And I would think that you could do that with the way you layer your scenes, or how you have that dancers like in different positions on stage. You make those choices, right?
Yeah, you can definitely do that.
That's interesting. So there's some things that are relatable.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, it's all very similar, right? When you're producing something, you're producing something, right? If you're directing it, you're directing it. It's just, what does that medium look like?
So do you teach direction in your film school, or are you teaching like the actual dance, the act of dancing, or are some of your students learning about direction too? Are you doing like all those things?
Yeah, we don't teach direction necessarily. They do have opportunities to produce their own work. And so we do work with them when they're doing that. So a little bit. It's not the main thrust of what we do. Um,
So
but we
mostly
definitely,
it's the act, the ability to dance is like the actual training for the dancers.
yeah.
In terms of like adaptability,
Hmm.
um, like you said that you had a lot of different, you've been with the Boston Ballet, you've been with a lot of different ballets worldwide.
Yeah.
Um, what allows a student or a dancer to be able to be adaptable, to be usable in multiple types of situations?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're talking about that in the ballet world, the dance world in general, is like the strength of your foundational technique. I mean, it just comes down to that. The artistic part is the fun stuff, right? But if you don't have the chops to actually do the work, you're not going to have the strength necessary to get through whatever choreography or material repertory that these different companies provide. So it's always that foundational technique and always going back to it. Dancers, we take company class every day, 5 days a week, and that's hour and a half class, hour 15, hour and a half, depends on where you are, to make sure your body is in the best shape it can be. So the lines and the musculature is really working for you. So that's the secret sauce. It just goes back to that daily class, and that allows you to do. And as you move through the career, you're just going to get stronger and stronger, and you get your physical language gets expanded as you work with different people, just like any musician or any artist. You have all those things.
So in training students today in the modern world, like what are the pillars of like a sustainable dance career? Like that you guys look at like all the aspects, like in terms of like your mindset, your nutrition,
Hmm.
your ability to get rest, your ability to like recover, like how much of that is actually taken in account today?
Well, yeah, I mean, we really talk to our. If I'm talking to, so I work with both students and professional dancers, mostly students, but I do work with companies. Um, it really is. We want to make sure that we are treating our bodies as best as we can. And so there is a rigor to the art form, like profession, just like pro sports. You got to get out. You got to be practicing. You got to be taking class, doing your rehearsals. So that's the physical part of that. Then of course you have to manage your body, right? So make sure that, I think dancers are so lucky now, and athletes, because we know so much more about sports nutrition and sports science. How do you manage the body effectively, right? Um, and so we make sure that we want to have our dancers make sure they're nutritionally supporting themselves. That's a huge part of it. And then again, we're also talking about the mental and emotional impact of what we're doing. How do you care for yourself that way, right? How do you make sure that you're mentally and emotionally prepared for all the work that you're going to do? Because we're not robots. We have real lives. We have to go to the bank. We have to go to the grocery store. We have to do all those other things and
Hmm.
manage all of those things, right? So it's a lot of time management, a lot of
Amazing.
all of those things that just combining together to make sure that you can function and be successful, just like any profession.
Yeah, would you say today that people are more mindful of those other pillars, where
Yeah.
maybe before there might have been focus on one or two
Yes.
without really understanding the whole, and then what then you tend to crash or not be able to recover.
Well, I think we're really lucky that there's been such a thrust to really honor and value and understand how important of the mental health of people are, and just in general. And
Hmm.
so that's been a big shift in the dance world, which it might have been, you can look at some of the dance films, and they absolutely sensationalize things of, really harsh pedagogies and really negative environments. They are sensationalized, but there's an element of truth to that, right? And so
Hmm.
what I've seen, especially in the last 10 years, but certainly probably last 20, but the last 10 years, there's been a real push in the companies to make sure that there's healthier environments, that dancers' voices are heard more, and they're not just disposable assets, right? They're
Yeah,
human beings that we're dealing with, and I think that goes pro sports, man. Uh,
yeah, it's the same
I mean,
kind of thing. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, if you get into the game of like a touring musician and you get on you go into Chicago and you go into Texas, you go to New York, you go boom, 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 boom,
yeah,
boom.
yeah,
There's a certain aspect of like when you're doing that, maybe when you're first 17
yeah,
or 18 or 19,
exactly.
but when you get a little older, it's like eventually you get to burn yourself out.
Yeah,
You have to actually. He's like, yeah, your road manager, they're your booker. They want you to do the show, but
exactly.
is that a sustainable thing for you, for your mental health? Is that sustainable to do that? Maybe not.
Yeah, it's challenging, but I just think the tone within the professional world, especially what we do, certainly what we do, and our how we teach, and the pedagogies of making sure our students, uh, that we're really mindful of their emotional and their mental health. It's so important so that they can actually be here and train the way they want to train, and the way that we're able to train them, because they have to be open to that, and prepared for that.
So the thing I want to talk about next is like the different kind of venues that you can be in. Like
Yeah,
you could be a live venue, you could be on a film set, you could
yeah,
be on like something for a commercial, you
yeah,
could even be doing work for video games or something. So the question is like give based on whatever type of form the dancer is going to be in, whether it's like live or not live or part of some other like motion capture for
yeah.
something. Like are there different like ways to teach dancers based on if you're going to be on film or versus on stage?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fortunately the live version of everything, like what we consider, um, live performance, that does train you for all these other things. There are certain skill sets in terms of when we're going in front of the camera, right? If you're going in front of a camera, you're doing a filmed version of whatever. It's a little easier, a little harder, because you're going to maybe take short chunks of something. You're going to do one shot, and you're going to do the first, I don't know, 15 seconds, and then you're going to change the shot. So it's easier because you get lots of takes, and you have lots of different possibilities, and it's maybe not strenuous, because you could do, maybe you're doing 15 seconds, maybe you're doing 2 minutes, and then you're cutting, right?
Hmm.
Versus doing like 30 minutes straight through a ballet, which is
Hmm.
exhausting. The flip side of that, if you're in front of the camera in that respect, is okay. You do a take, you cut, you reset, and then you're going to change the shot. You're going to do all that, and now you have to keep your body warm and you could be on a film set for many hours, where you're going from having to go full out in performance mode to absolutely you're going down. You're completely just relaxing and resting in between, and then you have to
Oh,
keep
up
your
and
body.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to keep your body ready to go, right? Every take has to be your best. Versus when you're going in a live performance, you just go.
You just
You are
go.
just
Yeah,
doing
you
it
don't have to
full
keep
out.
having this downtime could be really kind of mess you up,
Yeah.
potentially, I would think.
Yeah, so it's different. So we do work with our dancers with that. I mean, we do a lot of we do some film projects, I should say. So the skill sets are basically the same. It's just really managing your body, making sure, if you're on a film set, you have warm clothes to keep the body warm, and make sure you have snacks and water to make sure you're ready to go.
And also when you're working with like musicians or music, and you have like the difference between having like a set piece and maybe a collaboration where the piece is evolving with the dance like in real time. Like have you worked with people who are actually writing the music with the dance or the at the same time? It wasn't like pre-written. It was like written as a collaborative effort with the dancers. Is
Sure.
there
I mean,
anything like that
yeah,
happen?
of course, you could do some more experimental work, right? A lot of times, the contemporary works, you might be improving, right? So, and what that improv might be from take to take is going to be very different, and so you can absolutely coach them to approach it a little bit differently this time. Give them some ideas, maybe some colors or some emotion, or respond to the music. So, or use it, or think about your space. How are you using space? Maybe use a space more, maybe use it less, maybe do different levels. So you can do that when you're doing that kind of collaboration on a film set.
That's interesting because and then different types of music, like if you're dealing with different beat patterns, tempos,
Mhm.
keys, different, something like a more Eastern type of structure in terms of musicality versus like, Western, you're doing a like traditional canon level thing that's like traditional Western structure, orchestral music versus something that might be, West African music or,
Exactly.
music from the Middle East or something like indigenous, like Cherokee or, or, you know, Arawak or something like something different. It's a different approach.
Yeah.
So in terms of that type of approaches are in modern dance or experimental dance, I guess that you're saying like the basic training you give every dancer
Hmm.
prepares them to be able to handle that future state where it might not be what they learned in the canon, but they should be able to use their skill set.
Yeah, and you hope so, right? To greater or lesser extent, depending on the dancer and the talent of the dancer, because some dancers are really good at adapting and they really have an affinity to change styles, and some dancers really struggle with that as well. So you give them the foundation, and then you hope that you've set them up for success. So
Mhm. So in terms of like fostering equity and diversity, we'll get to this topic, which is kind of now today, like the no.
yeah,
It's like the people when they hear it, as soon as they hear it,
yeah.
they get this like grimace or they don't want to hear it. And so what are you doing in that space today because of like the kind of times we're in?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at, in terms of education right now, and what we look at to bring students in, right? For us, it's an audition only school, just like anyone has an application to get in, but you have to do an audition to get into our school. So we've really made an effort to make sure that we are trying to find different places to hold our auditions. We're trying to reach out to different communities that might not have easy access to us, because we want to make sure that we create as much access and opportunities as we can. And it's a longer game, right? We can't just snap our fingers and just hope that the dancers have the training to get into our program, right? It takes a pipeline. It takes
Yeah,
it
yeah.
takes training, and there's socioeconomic issues that you encounter, and we try to make as much scholarship dollars available as possible for our students who might not have that possibility. So that really, we look at it from that standpoint, of how do we create diverse cohorts of students in our school, because that helps everyone's experience to have those diversity of voices and people's lived experience. I think that's really helpful and necessary for artists.
Well, you have these, if you have outreach and pipelines where you set up a connection with a high school
Hmm.
or with a program in some urban area or some rural area that normally wouldn't get it, but there's maybe you find a community of people that want it.
Yeah,
There are students that want to do it. So if there's an outreach and there's a pipeline and there's some kind of program, then that can become a funnel.
yeah,
And so, yeah, that takes work because then that seems like that's where you actually had to plan something. You actually had to put some effort in. It's not just, oh, when somebody comes out of nowhere, there's actually guidance, or it's happening, training's happening. So
Yeah,
it's
and
coming from a purposeful point of view rather than say it's just an accident.
right. We can't just hope that we get a diverse cohort of students, because the systems are not set up that way. It's just not that way for anything. So we do have a bunch of outreach programs. We do have a preparatory program for younger dancers that can come through from the community so that we can help train them. So, it has to be very intentional. And we have to do that work, and we've been doing that work. But there's many things, there are many barriers and obstacles to try to overcome to make these programs as successful as possible.
Yeah, we're dealing with a lot of cultural stuff, and nowadays we got a
Yeah.
cultural rebellion against certain ideas. But moving to other things that are interesting to me in terms of innovations in education that you find today. Everybody's always talking about, I'll bring it up because I'm in tech.
Yeah.
In my day job, I'm a software designer. And so the big buzzwords are like AI.
Yeah.
Everybody's saying AI can do everything. Like
Yeah.
in the dance world, do you use AI at all for anything?
Um, not in terms of actual classwork in that respect. I do think, I think our dancers can really use it if for instance, maybe they're choreographing something, or they're trying to, or they're creating a piece. I think you could use AI there to scaffold your work. But in terms of, we don't have the tools yet in AI in terms of what does that movement vocabulary look like. But I do think it's coming, right? I mean, we
Yeah,
know
it's
we know
always
it's coming.
exponential.
Yeah,
We're the tech bros. We're always trying to put our hands into everything.
yeah,
In the music world, they're all over it.
yeah,
To some of our chagrin, that because they basically get to a point where they say, "Well, we don't need you as the artist because our
right,
AI will do that." And I was like, "Well, that's not what I'm looking for.
right,
As a musician, I use it as a tool.
yeah,
If I use it as a tool, maybe help with my post production.
yeah,
Maybe tell
exactly.
me hey, I want a sound and make it sound like the Neve board on Fleetwood Mac Rumors. So
Yeah,
go and run and edit. I can't afford that analog piece of equipment, but could you run the same compressor that Stevie Nicks had on her voice, right? And give me a virtual version of that compressor. And
yeah,
that kind of tech, it can do it. In some cases, it can do stuff like that. So that's useful for me, but I don't want it writing my bass line.
right, exactly.
I want to write the bass line. I want to play the bass line. I don't want it to do that. Some people might want it, but that's not. I'd rather have it give me the compressor.
Right.
That's what I'd rather have. But that's just my point of view.
I think there are lots of ways we can utilize the AI tools as tools to kind of scaffold our work, and there's nothing yet that's being done in the studio in terms of choreography. I know there's lots of research in that direction, um, but you're not seeing it in the profession itself. Do you know
Yeah,
what I'm
and
saying?
nobody's gonna build like a robot that's gonna show you how to do the movement. You still need a human being to do that movement. There's no robot that could be a ballet trainer robot,
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
which I guess they want, but it's not here.
one day, yeah, we'll see.
In terms of what you see coming in the future for dance in the modern world, in terms of reaching out to new audiences, getting people to be enthusiastic about it, do you find that there's any less enthusiasm coming in, people coming into dance for you today, or it
I,
still has the same fire in the belly that you had?
I think it's still the same, because I think what we're seeing is the reaction to so much screen time that actually, we're seeing people wanting to have live events, wanting to connect physically in real time with something versus staring at a screen. So I think it's gonna, dance and the live performance is going to be around for a long time. It's going to adapt, it's going to evolve, of course, and we need to. I'm a big proponent of that. I think we need to use the technology. We need to use the tools. Would love to see a piece done with AR. That would be amazing, right?
Hmm.
AR and VR live, like at the highest level. I mean, the technology is probably still too expensive at this point, but it's coming. So I think we're gonna see those kinds of things in the future.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to that the thing I've always been a big proponent of is like live, musicians playing live gigs.
Yeah,
And we've seen tons of automation in the music world where, in some places, some points it's like we have all these machines playing the music
yeah,
instead of musicians playing the music.
yeah,
And that to me as a musician, I'm kind of like not really into that. I'm like I think that if I'm doing a performance, it should be me playing the music because like as a human being, I interpret it like the way a dancer interprets the story, and there's something about a human spark of that individual artist that what they bring to that piece is something that no machine could ever do. But there's a lot of machines that can do things today,
yeah,
and so that's always been the kind of dichotomy. It's like, well, I like it to a certain extent, but then when it starts coming in and actually sanitizing the experience or making it not as vital to me as like playing something where there potentially could be something that you didn't hear before.
yeah,
Well, that's what you want, and I would think as a dancer, sometimes like that in the moment adjustment that you make because you're a professional and you know what to do, and that's part of the art, right?
yeah. I mean, there's nothing like a live performance, that live experience there. So I think it, it's not going away, and you just every show is different. Every performance is going to be different from that individual, from those artists, and you have a bunch of artists on stage depending on what you're doing. And
Yeah, it's just gonna be that much. It's just like when we get to this point where people have there's a lot of people who are pushing for really interesting tech where you could have like Jimi Hendrix on stage, virtual
yeah,
Jimi Hendrix, right? And your virtual band that doesn't exist anymore, like bring the Beatles back and do a Beatle virtual show with virtual Beatles on stage.
yeah,
Well, that could work, and there could be big audiences for that, but don't take away from like I'd rather see a live band do that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and people are going to play with that. We're going to see a lot of it. Obviously, we've seen lots of AI renditions of little films. So
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
just like,
happening.
I would hate to see dancers replaced by AI bots
Yeah, I
in
don't.
films that should be a dance film, like a musical film.
Yeah,
And instead of having the full cast, only the primary cast are the dancers, and the rest of them are all AI. I think that is a losing proposition for humanity. I understand the cost involved, but I think that having all those humans on stage doing it for real on film or live to me is just a better experience. But maybe
yeah.
I'm an old timer.
No, yeah, I think there's going to be both. I think you're going to see both, right? I think there's no way you're going to be able to keep that genie in the bottle. I think you're going to see that, and people will have choice, right? And so there will be choice there.
Maybe
And
there's a hybrid mix of like what is just right, like go to the three little bears is like what's the right combination?
yeah, who knows? Who knows? I'd be curious to see it. I mean, you don't. We're talking about AI and how that impacts jobs and how that all those things, and we want to see artists, human beings, creating art.
Yeah, I mean the whole point of it to me, getting up every day, is I love finding new creative people. Like this is what the whole point of this podcast. I talk to creative people all the time from different areas of the arts.
Yeah,
And I would hate that, the future I'm just talking to AI bots
yeah,
that are
yeah,
pushing corporate like entities instead of
exactly.
actually talking to a real creative person.
Well, yeah, it's like going on customer service, and you have an AI bot person or whatever
Yeah.
talking to them. Like this is not a person. They're not going to be able to problem solve the same way.
Yeah. It's just there's something about that, like that just the nature of like the unexpected uh, you know, beauty of art in itself. Like the fact that I don't know what's going to happen from moment to moment is, to me, that's the payday.
Exactly.
That's what I like. You know, there's some people that want a band to go and play their single exactly the way it's on the master.
Yeah.
But I'd rather see them actually deviate from what's on the master and play it live and actually change it. Even the lyrics change it. Like, why not? Like Dylan used to do that. He
Yeah.
would go out and play a song from Blood on the Tracks and have multiple versions of the lyrics. And from
Yeah.
show to show, you would actually see a different version, hear a different version of the song.
Yeah. You might have, yeah, different arrangements, and who knows?
Yeah, that's somehow, to me, is like, that's super satisfying, because that moment was special, because what he did yesterday and what he does next week is not always the same thing, you know, and
Exactly.
that's why it's worth going to and actually going and finding a tape of that show and say, here, that's a piece of history. This is a very unique moment, and it's not like this other moment.
Yeah. Exactly.
But are there things that you would tell students, since you know you teach students? Is your, you know, what are some nuggets like that you could tell like a dance student coming into the field, that, you know, three things that would be really important to their career?
Hold on one second. I'm sorry. I'm going to move my dog. He keeps coming in and out.
Oh,
I'm going to move.
that's fine.
There we go. All right. Apologize for that. Should have moved him out there. He just got rambunctious. So I think nuggets for my students right now, you know, you have to invest and trust in the process, right? You have to use your energy, because it's such a young art form, and the body, when you're younger, it has to be trained early on. So I think it's a process. Anytime we're creating art, there's no destination there, right? We have moments that we can highlight, and that we maybe celebrate, whether that's a performance or creating a work, but it's a process, right? It's, if you create one work, that's just a pathway to the next work. And
Mhm.
so it's not like even if it's like a huge success, you make one success and then you have to move on. So always go back, invest, and enjoy the process. Because if you don't enjoy the process, I don't think you're going to be very successful as an artist, probably in any profession. But because we always have to evolve what we're doing, and we always have so many influences in our lives that inform our viewpoint.
Yeah, sometimes it's the happy accident. It's the process of getting there. Like, it's the steps on the ladder, right? Like, I might have like a song that's got like 10 versions of it, demos. And I finally, on version 17, I finally got the right combination, but I'm not going to say I failed on the other 16. The
Yeah.
other 16 versions of the song got me to version 17, which is the one that I finally decided that's the one I present to the world, and that's the one that actually worked. But that process of getting there, I actually am thankful for all the 16 steps they brought me there.
Yeah, I know that a lot of choreographers, you see them, they create works, and you know, if they have a fairly good career, you know, they create a work and one work doesn't work. And then, but what they do is they take what worked from that. What can I learn from that? I'll take that thing from that work and put it in my new piece. Maybe you just, is a germ of an idea, and then you keep evolving that idea, right? It's going to be a different point of view, but
Yeah.
you always are learning from your work, right? You learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
So
It's like your big, your little like box of secrets. Like a lot of times, like we have our trick box, or our, like, I got all these grooves in a box. I
yeah,
got all these loops. I got all these hooks. And like, I think Steely Dan one time said, we had this song, we had like 5 hooks. And we took them out of our hook box and threw 5 into one song to make it hit. Because like we knew we couldn't just have one. We had to like overload it. But they were pulling hooks from other projects that didn't work.
right.
And you pull things, sometimes it's not symmetrical, right? It's not sequential. Sometimes the things come from different, like it might be this future idea. Like, right, there's something like you're working on it for this other book. But then you say, well, no, I'm going to steal it back and put it in this book.
Absolutely.
that's that's how it works. It's like
Right.
sometimes it's like it's not always going from point A to B. It's like E back to, Z.
Yeah. It's steal from the best. And if you could say, hey, I'm the best, so I'll steal from myself. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah, that's the way it goes. I think it's just an interesting and learning experience. I think until you're not here, and it's cool that you were able to take, because you have a certain like expiration date to your body not being able to do the craft. Like where a blues musician, as long as he was on that fretboard,
Yeah.
he can do it. He'll do it till he's not here.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but like if you get to the point where you can't do it, then you can't. But like to be able to then kind of pivot to being a teacher and a mentor, I think that's a cool way to think about things, and people maybe should like, even though there might not be in your field, they can apply that ideas like, hey, even if I can't do the thing I love to do, I
Yeah.
could actually help people love it just like I do.
Yeah, I mean, there's things that I can do still. I can choreograph, I can direct, I can produce, I can teach, right? I can mentor. All those things are things that I do, and I enjoy. So you stay connected with the art form, even though I can't physically, you can't do it at the highest level, at the
Yeah, yeah,
professional level anymore.
yeah. I think that's a great story, and I love bringing this story to everybody. We do have your link there. I did want to mention that before we leave. Jared-Redick.com. If people click on that, what do they find there? Is that that's everything about you?
Yeah, it's my webpage. You'll find a little bio. Doing consulting work as well. If anyone wants to talk about dance specific, or even nonprofit ideas as well. I've worked in nonprofits quite a bit. Arts administration as well.
Mhm.
So I do get a lot of requests for that information to work with me. They can come on, have a free consult with me, and we can just
Awesome.
see where it goes from there.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank people. We do encourage people to click on the links that we provide. That link below, jared-reddick.com, that would be fully clickable on all the platforms around. We've just been on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We'll be on major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon by tomorrow. But I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast.
Well, thanks so much. I really enjoyed having this conversation, and I hope your audience really enjoyed our dialogue today.
Well, thank you. Well, have a great night.
Okay, you too.